Good evening. I'm Kelly Wright. Thanks for joining me as we spend this next hour together. And as always, I do sincerely hope that you're safe and well, taking care of yourself and your family, because you matter. My opening observation tonight focuses on violence, something we don't like to talk about, yet it's there in front of us. It still exists, even in the midst of this global pandemic of COVID-19. We find ourselves dealing with the epidemic of gun violence in our inner cities and even in our rural areas and small towns. And there is something we can do about it. We can stop violence, but it takes a Herculean effort from each and every one of us to address it and combat it in our Black and brown communities. Now, having stated that, let me give a personal footnote. I grew up in Southeast Washington, D.C., in sections known as Anacostia and Congress Heights, some very tough neighborhoods. I saw violence on a regular basis. It was routine as I would walk to and from school. My single-parent mother did everything she could to advise me on how to maneuver around the violence, to avoid it, not succumb to it. She would put me in the hands of mentors, the Boys and Girls Club, anything necessary to keep my mind focused on something other than violence. I also grew up in a small town of Hagerstown, Maryland, and saw violence take place there. There, I lost a couple of friends before they ever got to see the age of 30 due to violence. Regardless of what's going on with this COVID-19 pandemic, let us not lose sight of the fact that we have to protect ourselves by masking up, COVID down, but we also have to protect ourselves in the streets by putting the guns down. We have to do that. Otherwise, we as African Americans may not survive the onslaught of a pandemic and epidemic. It's just that vital. And those are my opening observations. And so tonight we're going to devote some time to talking about an organization called Cure Violence Global. And they basically have stated this: to say that violence spreads like a disease is not a metaphor. It is what the science now shows. Violence meets the dictionary definition of a disease, and hundreds of studies now confirm that violence is contagious. Now, this is very good news, according to the report from Dr. Gary Slutkin, the founder of Cure Violence Global. He is an epidemiologist who has worked with the World Health Organization. And the reason why in this article it states that it's good news, it says it's good news because we have highly effective and time-tested public health methods used worldwide to stop the spread of contagious diseases like violence. Cure Violence has worked with local partners to successfully reduce violence in some of the most violent communities here in the United States, Canada, and around the world by employing epidemic control and behavior change methods. They've been doing it for nearly 20 years. And they're being recognized now by politicians and leaders around the world. In fact, they are recognized as one of the top NGOs by the United Nations and lead in terms of quelling violence by bringing in peace and violence interrupters to keep the peace. Recently, Mayor Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York City, recognized and acknowledged the great work that violence interrupters of Cure Violence have been doing on the streets of New York City.
We talk about nonprofits, we think about a lot of different organizations, a lot of them very well known to New Yorkers all over the city, settlement houses and different organizations that come out of faith traditions that provide social services. Everybody in every community knows about organizations that came up from the grassroots and do amazing work for their communities. One of the things that New Yorkers don't know as much about is the Cure Violence movement, also known as the Crisis Management System. This is a movement that I have come to know in recent years and have such respect for, because this is community people deciding to stop gun violence and standing up, often putting their own lives on their line to create peace in their own communities, to mediate, to stop conflicts before they happen. There have been extraordinary results. So as I've gotten to know the Cure Violence movement, I've been so impressed by what it means, not only for stopping violence, but what it means about communities creating their own leadership to solve their own problems. And the city of New York needs to support that because it's the right thing to do and it works. Well, right now in the middle of this horrible challenge with the coronavirus, it's become clearer and clearer that the Cure Violence movement can be such an important part of fighting back this disease. Cure Violence is the original concept, but it also has so much to say about community leaders and community members coming together to solve a range of problems. It's not that Cure Violence can cure the virus, but Cure Violence can help to contain the disease, can help to push it back in neighborhoods by educating people, giving them the tools they need, helping people to hear what's the right thing to do from trusted community voices. So our racial equity and inclusion task force, which has been set up inside the city government representing a whole range of city agencies, has been working on the issue of what's the fullest use we can make of the Cure Violence movement. And I had a great conversation with Cure Violence leaders just a few days ago, and we all agreed that there's a frontline role to play in fighting the coronavirus. So we have now 20 or so community partner organizations we'll be working with in this effort. And one example was on Monday when I went to Queensbridge Houses, largest public housing development in New York City. Here is a place, again, biggest public housing development in the city, and has had an extraordinary turnaround in terms of reducing violence, and that shows us how much more could be achieved by this movement. The organization is 696, an amazing organization, has helped to bring a lot more peace and a lot less violence to Queensbridge Houses. They're one example of many great organizations, so we're going to support these groups through this summer and beyond to address the coronavirus as well. Right now, we've got 150 Cure Violence organization workers out in communities, educating people, reminding them, giving them warnings about issues like social distancing, face coverings, giving out the face coverings for free. We're now going to more than triple that. We're adding 375 more Cure Violence workers to this effort. The title they will be given is Social Distance Enhancers. It's a great phrase, social distance enhancers. They'll be starting in the next week or so, building out through June. And this means 10 to 15 new staff at each site, deep into communities, and having a big impact through the summer into September.
So you can see that Mayor Bill de Blasio acknowledges and is grateful for what Cure Violence is doing on the streets of New York City. As I've stated, violence is contagious like an epidemic disease. And the man who came up with that is Dr. Gary Slutkin. He's the founder of Cure Violence, and he saw it after being able to treat cases like Ebola, tuberculosis, and HIV/AIDS in Africa for 15 years for the World Health Organization. When he returned to the United States, he discovered that violence fit the same pattern as an epidemic. Here is how Dr. Gary Slutkin views methods in curing violence.
It was absolutely clear that this was a health and a public health issue, and that the strategies that we ordinarily use for changing behavior and for shifting norms would be those that would be needed here.
Dr. Gary Slutkin, when we return from the break, we'll be talking more about Cure Violence, devoting our entire program to focusing on how one man on the streets of Chicago is among many violence interrupters trying to change the city by curing violence.
I come from the gang lifestyle, kind of like the guys that we interact with now. I mean, you know, I was 18, so that's why I can relate to just making bad decisions, wanting to be a part of different things instead of going, you know, the school route. I wanted to go the street route. I wanted to be able to carry a pistol and justify why I got it, you know, and all that just made sense to me. And so I found myself in it, and unfortunately, it landed me 10 years in federal penitentiary.
Hey, Marcus, what's going on?
I was just following up with you about the trainings. So those are the proposed dates right now. A lady in my neighborhood came to me. She said, this is a new program. It's about saving lives and stopping these shootings and killings. I was a violence interrupter. I was an outreach worker. After constantly showing up and doing the cookouts and going to the funerals and showing that I'm sincere about this, the community and people, they really bought into me. This is a statement I got from my brothers in New York, and I like it. Formerly incarcerated professional, because I'm a professional now. And I was formerly incarcerated, but it shouldn't stop me to be somebody good in society, somebody that can give back to society. How many days y'all going now without a shooting?
We had 116.93 on this side, and in the old target area, it's 216 and 115.
We look at violence as learned behavior. If you get mad at me and I get mad at you, all my friends, they don't even know you, they're mad at you. So now we want to stop the back and forth, the retaliations that could come with it as well. If we can't stop it on the front end, we definitely want to stop damage control from one family being mad at this family. First, you got to stop the transmission of that. Then you got to change the behavior associated with it. And then you got to change the way the community thinks about it. And that's what Cure Violence is about.
I was shot and paralyzed at 18. I went back to that same environment where I was shot at, did the same things, the same problem that we see and face every day. My friends was part of that problem. They was irate, pissed off, ready to retaliate. I'll be 42 this year. I ain't just changed overnight. We partnered with 3 level 1 trauma centers. It started out with outreach workers, then violence interrupters, and then you took those same 2 components and put it inside a hospital institution where we just replicate what we did in the community.
So that gives you a good look at what happens on the streets of Chicago, and we'll show you more of that as the program goes on. But let me introduce to you now Jermaine Merritt. He's better known as Juice on the streets in Chicago. Now, he's a violence interrupter for Cure Violence, and he knows the streets and how hard life can be there. He also knows how tough life can be if you're in lockup or incarceration, because he spent some time in prison. But more importantly, he knows how you can turn your life around and actually become a change agent for the better. Jermaine, Juice, good of you to join us today. And I got to ask you, how did you get involved in Cure Violence to save lives on the streets as a violence interrupter?
Well, first off, I want to thank you for having me on your show, for having this opportunity to spread the message of what Cure Violence does as a whole. I came into light with this situation of changing my mindset by way of a close friend of mine by the name of Kobe. Kobe was an individual who was with me in the streets for decades, and we was incarcerated together. So when Kobe got out of prison, he was introduced to ceasefire. Once he was introduced to ceasefire ideology from Dr. Slucken, what he put together, it changed Kobe's mindset. So in the process of Kobe getting his mindset changed, he didn't change his life. A few years went past, he was passing that knowledge on to us, those that was incarcerated. Those brothers and sisters he felt as though that was inspirational and powerful enough to just take on this responsibility and change their way of thinking. I was one of those fortunate individuals, right? So at first I didn't buy into, ceasefire. I was still in the streets. I didn't want to hear that, even though I'm incarcerated. I don't know nothing else but the streets. But to see him walk that walk, and I know he didn't come from where I didn't come from, it was more lead by examples, right? So out of 100 or so individuals I had to talk to on a daily basis, negative individuals, only had 2 positive people, and that was him and my mother, right? And aunties and things of that nature, but I'm in communication with him and my mother constantly. So to see him come back in prison and visit us, send us money, all that was cool. But to see his mindset change, when I saw his mindset change, he was more happier. And, at times the budget was cut for the funding, and he was still out there in the community and still putting his life on the line, out here walking around without a gun, a badge, a bulletproof vest, a Motorola phone, but still interacting and changing the mindsets of individuals in our community. I thought that was commendable, right? So now I say, here it is, upon my arrival, Lord willingly, I'll be 40-some years old. I still have a lot of influence, a lot to pass on to these younger brothers and sisters who are in our community and our target areas, right? So I say, I want to change my mindset. And I thought about him, and he just kept encouraging me. And I started reading the material now, what Dr. Sluckers was putting out there. So now I'm adding everything up, and I'm like, okay, the material adding up, the substance and character from Kobe is adding up. I want to be a part of it. So I put my all into it. And lo and behold, by the grace of God, I changed my mindset at the age of 30-some years old, right? I'm knowing I'm finna come home from the penitentiary. My arrival finna soon to come to pass. I came home from the penitentiary by the grace of God. Volunteer with Cure Violence Global for like a year and a half straight. They want to make sure that they do an assessment of me, which I understand, right? I worked numerous jobs in the process of still being a volunteer. And finally, I came on board as a consultant. Got that situated, did so great as a consultant, moved on to a technical assistant, did so well in that. Now I'm an implementation specialist where we travel the world and implement the Cure Violence model. Where we go around the world and train violent interrupters and outreach workers and supervisors and program managers, etc., the Cure Violence ideology. So that's a great thing to do, but all that transformation came from one individual who came from that community from which I came from, showed me a direct path of change, and I took advantage of that. So that's the same thing that we illustrate to our participants and to our community abroad, right? We able to grab individuals who was once part of the problem, that then change their mindset. We grab those individuals out of the community, such as myself. We train them up on the Cure Violence model. Once we train them up on the Cure Violence model, it's things that they are already conscious of, but we magnify it and let them know here a better strategy that you can merge with your ideology and put together, right? And now those younger brothers and sisters, those participants in our community, who they look up to now, opposed to them looking up to drug dealers, shooters, and killers, they looking up to past 10th individuals who are inspirational in the community and giving back to the community.
When we return, we'll continue my conversation about curing violence on the streets of Chicago and around the world with Jermaine Merritt, better known as Juice. Back with more after this. Well, Jermaine, you're out there in the streets serving as a violence interrupter. How are you and Cure Violence actually helping people in the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic that we're facing?
We sent back creating pub ed for the community and passing out pub ed as well as PPE material in the community, right? Free of charge, and educating people on how we sit back and do things properly. This is one of our face masks right here, give us 6 feet, and we just create things that going to embrace the community, whether we pass out water and PPE, whether we sit back and get them just pub ed and PPE, we educate them on the transmission of COVID, as well as we look at it's a virus, as well as violence is a virus, so it's a dual combination. When we have our pub ed, one side be for the COVID situation and one side be for this violent prevention, you know what I mean? So it's a double-edged sword that we're attacking. It's just not one edge that we 70% violent prevention, because now when you sit back and say this COVID virus then spiraled out of control, and now you're able to wear face masks and gloves, what are you telling individuals who are here allegedly shooting and killing? You're giving them permission to do a lot of different things now because they got the face mask and everything. So now that's making it more empowering for them to do what they do, but it's also making our resources are more harder to put into those concentrated areas to stop those individuals from reacting violently, because now they've been told they can wear masks and gloves, right? So now I can be out in the daytime and I can go run up on somebody and shoot them now because I'm allowed to wear a mask and a glove, so I can blend in with the regular population. But if we don't have individuals like me on location to dissect what's going on in the community, to know their language, we're not going to be able to interpret what they say. We're going to be able to interpret what they do. And after what they did, they didn't kill someone. Now we're able to interpret things. No, we catch everything on the front end, everything. So, we try to stop everything that we can, but we can't stop everything, right? So we try to stop everything that we can, and we be successful. So that's the great thing about it. I love to hear stories where, like, we implemented the program down in Jacksonville, Florida. I salute Jacksonville, Florida for being a remarkable job. Got 2 different sites now. They're going on to a 3rd site because they've been doing a wonderful job in Jacksonville, right? So when you're going to do a wonderful job, like we was telling them in Atlanta, you are just the beginning of the pathway for other individuals to follow, right? And if you set the path the right way and follow the Cure Violence model, it's going to go right. Now other sites going to go up. So now as other sites go up, that means there's other positions to hire, right? You'll want to hire from within. You'll want to sit back and say, you know what, we got program directors position, program manager spots open, outreach worker spots open, supervisor spots open. So that gives everyone another chance to build.
You really drive home very good points on what all of us can do if we pay attention to our communities and get involved. I wanted to talk to you, though, about the president and about politicians. The president several weeks ago mentioned that he was going to send in federal troops to Chicago to deal with violence on the streets there. And I've always thought that instead of threatening to send federal troops to Chicago, why doesn't he, along with his staff, travel to Chicago to sit down and talk with violence interrupters like yourself, as well as mentors? What could he learn by talking instead of sending in federal troops?
I mean, numbers don't lie. When you sit back and have independent evaluations did on organizations, and then you have individuals that completely change their mindset and leading examples, I mean, what more do you really need, right? And that's my thing, right? Before you sit up here and agitate a situation and, in reference to sending troops down here, in reference to President Trump, sending troops to Chicago, sending federal agents, doing all this type of stuff, you're supposed to really connect with that community. When you connect with that community now, you be able to get a whole bunch of different insight, a whole different perspective, because aggression, you combat aggression with aggression at times. You fight violence with violence at times, right? And when you come into a hostile situation, how you think individuals feel knowing that, this brother that got killed and got strangled out like that, right? And it's all on TV. And the next thing you know, behind individuals showing their rage, and they done tore up a few things and then protested and did unnecessary things here and there, all you can sit back and say is to send troops in. So now, an agitated situation brought with some more agitators to agitate the situation. Then you tell the agitators indirectly beforehand, loot, shoot. Okay, now the people interpret that as, okay, then now you come into our town and whatever may be going on, y'all shooting through the gate, right? How do you think the public gonna perceive that, right? It's like you want to declare martial law on the community, on certain demographics of people, right? And that's something it's crazy to me. Y'all sit back and say y'all talking about all these shootings and murders in Chicago and all over the world, but y'all send some federal agents in here and they lock up a number of alleged drug dealers. You sit up here and tell me y'all found some guns and show all this stuff on the news and have these news conferences. Ain't one gun has a murder on there, I guess. Y'all need to sit back and publicly say y'all found this machine gun and say y'all got these from these guys doing all these shootings. Here go machine gun, they committed 3 murders. Y'all ain't did no press conference like that. Y'all ain't did, but y'all got individuals up there and ain't got one murderer. When y'all grabbed all these influential individuals who stopping stuff off these streets, now these murders are study shooting. They study just reacting. And that fueled the fight even more, because now, if you just say, for instance, you grabbed individuals who was out here mediating situations and stopping things, and now they're incarcerated, and you done came up with some alleged whatever drug charges or whatever thing, other individuals now, they going off into doing what they doing. Right, but you haven't locked up one murderer in regards to all these shootings and the sporadic shootings in neighborhoods. This study shooting still going on, right? But y'all talking about y'all sending federal agents here to combat the violence in Inglewood and Chicago. It ain't happening. Yeah. And I know the people deserve, better than this. They deserve better treatment than this. Ain't nowhere in the world you're gonna bring a situation, agitators, and then you got a pattern of showing where the police or the federal government that came into certain cities, and this is the reaction of that. This is the reaction to that. So now you showing, it's a precedent example what the reaction is in certain cities. You saying you don't care about those examples, still send them there. That's a bad look, Yeah.
We're coming back with more of my conversation about cure violence after this.
What's up, my brothers? Everything's good, man. Everything's good.
Good to see you, man.
Likewise, man. How you been? Everything been good? Yes, everything good.
They hadn't had a shooting in a while, then they had a situation happen and 3 people got shot. Within 72 hours, they organized a shooting response. So they're gonna march and hit the street where he got shot because it's in their target area.
And it just happened a couple days ago? The shooting did?
I think it was retaliation from the shooting.
shooting.
The shooting before. We actually had 4.
The one that was from the day before, was it in your area too?
That same area right here. Same area.
Oh, okay.
These guys all their life, they've been in the streets. They've been around high risk situations. Sometimes they incited them. I incited them. And now they're ready to do something different with their lives.
We was in a meeting with the guys around the corner. Somebody broke in his crib, stole a gun or whatever.
Yeah.
And he called somebody down here to retaliate, and they was ready to retaliate. It was a big mediation. I just put it in. So it's easy for me to come in and mediate because they already look up to me.
It's not nothing that you just look up one day and say, you know what, I'm gonna be a violence interrupter, outreach worker, and I'm gonna start putting myself between group A and group B with no bulletproof vest, all we have is our word.
To be truthful with you, all we do in the community is get salute. I mean, throughout the community, all we do is get salute. They salute us, right? Because at the end of the day, we changed the norm in our community. And I don't, as far as threats, I've never experienced that. It's just how you carry yourself, right? And they see it through us. They know that we are part of our community. They see our passion, they feel our passion, and they just fall back. And I'm talking about these individuals who are allegedly shooting and killing. Some of them might be going from state to state. Some of them might just be on location. But they understand that, hey, our mindset has changed, man, and that we are part of this community. And we standing firm. We're going to be here. So despite anything, we might come back another day. Y'all hot, y'all upset, but we in our community, bro. We're not finna let our community get took over because you young guys or individuals want to sit up here and keep violent. I got grandkids, right? And my grandkids deserve to be outside without nobody looking over their shoulder without being worried about getting shot. But they conscious of this now. So I can only make it better for generations to come as well as those present. And if you're not able to accept this, understandable. I can't win all y'all over, right? But I'm knowing I'm doing my process, my due diligence. I put my life on the line every day, right? But I'm knowing what I'm going into before I go into it. I'd rather sit back and say, you know what? I want to sit back and get back to my community than me staying somewhere in Fort Lauderdale, Texas, or Florida, laid up and retired and run the business over line. I don't get none with that. I get self-fulfillment. I get by the grace of God, praising Him every morning. Like, just see where you didn't have me come from. I give praises to God for even putting me through these experiences and thanking Him for making me be incarcerated for 19 years. It was a blessing. He put me incarcerated because I used to question God for 10 years straight. Like, how could you put me in prison for a crime I didn't do? But then when I realized, you call yourself part of an organization that y'all don't question authority figures, but now you call yourself a God-fearing man and you fear God, but you questioning God. So you contradicting yourself. So when I stopped questioning God, I had 9 years left. The 9 years started going smooth now because I stopped questioning God. Everything has a purpose. It has a meaning. It wasn't by coincidence I got incarcerated. It wasn't by chance. It was by design that saved my life. In order for me to save countless lives out there, I had to show, man, He got a purpose for you. All them years I'm in prison, I got it right.
Well, Jermaine, when it comes to police reform and Black Lives Matter, how do you view the two groups in terms of what they can do to not only reform the police, but also Black Lives Matter helping in the communities where there's a significant amount of crime going on amongst Blacks and Browns? How do we deal with this?
Well, I'm not too familiar with exactly Black Lives Matter, exactly what they do. Exactly. I done heard of them. I'm familiar with certain things, but I'm not fully exactly everything they do. But for the most part, any organization that's out here for the community, just continue to build and do a peaceful demonstration in regards to, getting your message across. And I know it's a lot of things that's going on with these police officers and things of that nature. I think it needs to be a better job with that. As far as defunding police and things of that nature, I think, certain areas of the police department need to be defunded. Here it is, I'm a taxpayer, I'm paying taxes, I'm paying individual salaries, $80,000 a year, and you around here killing individuals, and you're around here when individuals having protests about this Floyd, the man, the legacy of Floyd, etc. You around here throwing up your middle finger in the protest. right? I mean, what does that say? What type of message does that say? You know what I mean? So, you know, I think it needs a lot of reform around policing. You know what I mean? And I think they need a lot of training. You know, a lot of sensitivity training to how to cope and deal with individuals in the community. You know, like I say, I did 19 years for the police putting the case on me. My case is public record. You can Google Jermaine Merritt and go to JermaineMerritt.wix.com and see my actual police reports and everything, right? So I'm knowing the dynamics of what the police can do, and the state's attorney, they told me in my face, we're gonna give him the Oak Park case. At that time, I didn't know nothing about the Oak Park case. I didn't really too much know nothing about the suburb. But once I was in custody and I'm going back to court and I'm looking at the police report, I'm like, oh, I remember the detective and the state's attorney saying they're gonna give me the Oak Park case. I'm thinking because they fed me some Burger King and it's a nice police station, they're not doing the things that they do over in Inglewood, right? Oh boy, they're doing it even worse. So now my mindset was like, okay, then they done did me like this. I'm a little old petty guy from Chicago, Inglewood guy. If you done got upset with me like this enough to take me away from my family and my loved ones to get me 38 years, and you content enough to sit in your bed and do the normal things you did, and I know it's more than like 4 of y'all conspired to do this. You done did this more than once. Right? So imagine an individual like me sitting up and seeing these videos and seeing all this stuff going on. We go through PT, we go through traumatic stress syndrome every day. Everybody almost does that. From 3-year-old kids, when they see a traumatic situation or see their mom and daddy go into a fight, that's something they reflect on all the time. I reflect on the police and back saying, yeah, give him the Oak Park case. I reflect on 1984 Mercury Cougar that I got locked up for. I reflect on videotapes and inventory. You know, I mean, the bank, when I ride past the bank, it happened at. How can you lock somebody up for a state case and you said it happened in a bank parking lot? The feds didn't even pick my case up. You said it happened in a bank parking lot, somebody trying to take an 84 Mercury Cougar from somebody without a gun, a knife, a badge, or nothing, and they had dress clothes on. And then they found the car. It happened all in like 20 minutes. They found the car like 2 blocks over with the keys and it's still running. So what would be the purpose for this whole car theft thing? But yet I did 19 years in prison. The Prisoner Review Board recommended my immediate release in 2010. The governor denied it based on whatever reason he denied it. But I didn't come home bitter. I didn't come home and say, you know, I have a problem with all Mexicans because Mexicans got me incarcerated. When this racial thing was going on here in Chicago, I was the first one went over there on 22nd, went over there to all these Mexicans, 200-300 Mexicans outside with guns and bats and dogs, and talked them down and let them know, as a black man who'd been incarcerated, and know some of y'all from being incarcerated, right? And as a black man that was convicted on a case I didn't do, by some Mexicans, I should be the one who feeling some type of way, but I don't feel some type of way. My community don't feel no type of way behind any of this type of stuff, right? So don't let one of our actions, I'm not going to oppose one of y'all actions, sit back and just blame rain on the whole Mexicans as well as the whole blacks. And we show unity. We put that on Facebook, you know, and we did that, and that calmed a lot of things down. So we do a lot of stuff that the masses don't, the public don't really know. You know, we out here day in and day out. You know what I mean? And make no mistake about it, the police, they have a job to do in the community. But one thing for sure, if I'm paying my taxes, I'm a tax-paying citizen, I got a right, I got a voice. And my voice saying, hey, you need to be trained on certain things and y'all need to be defunded on certain things. You need to be some type of community awareness in there, because if it's individuals like us that's monitoring our neighborhoods and you got another organization who's monitoring and policing the neighborhood, it's going to be a better situation, because I'd rather have another organization locking up Tyrone because he stole some, he did a burglary, things of that nature, than the police locking him up, because I'm knowing what the police capable of doing to him when they lock him up. He might not even come back. They might kill him. They might do this. But I know if Mr. Jordan, them, Ms. Johnson, them lock him up, they are a community organization, community-based organization, and they can only go on certain type of laws. They can't come up for no shootings and murders because this is the organization that's not for that. Right, but meaning little crimes that's in the neighborhood, that's what they obligated to do. So I'd rather for Mr. Johnson and Mr. Jordan and pay them 50, 60, 70,000 a year for them to police the neighborhood, right? Then pay the police officers 80, 70, 90,000 a year to police the neighborhood, and I'm worried about them killing my little brother when they lock him up. I'm worried about this, right? But I won't have those same worries if I sit back and employ Mr. Johnson and build them up and train them on how to be effective in our community. Now the police is just doing the real hard part. You know what I mean? They can sit back and write traffic tickets. Mr. Johnson can sit back and your kids ain't showing up in school, how to give you pay you a fine for that. They know how to do all that, because that's like in the community right now. When the individual do a shooting, and you got witnesses, somebody gonna tell. Everybody is not, I'm not gonna no stitch law. So I can't knock nobody for them telling, right? So all I can do is empower them. Hey, if you're gonna sit back and tell, if you're gonna sit back and lock somebody up, be conscious of how you lock them up. Be conscious of how you do this, and we train them up the same way we train the police up. And we empower our community. Yeah, what it really was, to be honestly truthful with you, I was an individual in the community that was kind of like wild. Okay, about me being wild, the police, pulled me over and caught me with some drugs and one day, and I talked to crazy, and I had a few dollars, and that perpetuated to them putting a case on me, right? So they got a young black man, 24 years old, got a few dollars, talking crazy to him, and hey, y'all do what y'all need to do, I'm gonna do what I need to do. They say, okay, you from Chicago, you from Inglewood, you out here in the suburbs, so we got something for you. You're in the suburbs. They told me they was charging me with a kidnapping and carjacking that I knew nothing about. I got 3 cars of it, but ain't none of them in my name at the time, and I couldn't present that, right? But they found me guilty of a kidnapping and carjacking, gave me 38 years for that, offered me 7 years. I wouldn't take the 7 years. I could have got right out, but I wasn't admitting something I didn't do. The kidnapping and carjacking wasn't no motive. My fingerprint on the car, the videotapes they said they had me on getting in the car was all blank. Why would you as detectives put blank videotapes in inventory? Only to just give me a grand jury indictment to hold the black man in jail more long and couldn't bond out. Nothing took it from the victim, not even a stick of gum. When no weapon involved, a gun, a knife, anything, and you give a man 38 years, right? I found guilty. I got found guilty, had a trial, everything. The victim and the witness came to told the public defender and the private investigator that it wasn't me. But then came to trial and said it was me. So they lied and contradicted themselves. The got on the stand, the victim got on the stand, and my public defender, Julia Harmon, my lawyer asked her, did you tell public defender Julia Harmon, the officer of the court, that Jermaine Merritt didn't commit this crime? The victim said, I don't know. Okay, you don't know if you said that, right? But you're sure 2.5 years ago, Jermaine Merritt kidnapped you in your car? I'm sure of that, but you weren't sure 2 years ago that an officer of the court came to your house and talked with you and you told them that Jermaine Merritt didn't do it? Yeah, I'm sure of that. I mean, there's just they railroaded me. So long story short, I ended up doing all the time. I was upset. I woke up every morning in jail upset, obviously about something I didn't do. And like I say, by the grace of God, after 10 years of me questioning God, once I stopped questioning, the other 9 years or so went so easy. And then I'll start developing a mindset change that knowing like I'm finna hit society and what am I gonna do with it? Am I gonna use my influence in a positive way? Or am I just gonna relax and go down, go move to another state and say, forget all the turmoil and all of the madness and the destruction I caused in Inglewood and throughout little suburban areas, right? Give back to my community. So that's what I chose to do. And I'm giving back to my community. So if my life on the line of anything with threats or that is, I've never even heard that. All we see in the community is they be super glad that we're there.
Yeah.
All we see.
Jermaine Juice Merritt, thank you for being on the program tonight and continue to do the great work that you're doing on the streets of Chicago as well as globally when you start traveling overseas to help other countries and cities deal with violence firsthand by being able to de-escalate those situations and really bring people together at that table of understanding. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Salute you. Anytime.
Anytime. And we'll be back with more after this. Welcome back. I want to thank Juice, Jermaine Merritt, a violence interrupter with Cure Violence Global, for sharing his insights and his personal involvement in curing violence on the streets of Chicago. Certainly, the work still needs to be done. And they're offering opportunities to people around the world to join them to be hired by them. So if you're looking for a job that is something that will help you change the community, look into Cure Violence. You can go to cureviolence.org. My final thought here. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. talked about violence. He stated the ultimate weakness of violence is that it is a descending spiral, begetting the very thing it seeks to destroy. Instead of diminishing evil, it multiplies it. Through violence, you may murder the liar, but you cannot murder the lie, nor establish the truth. Together, we can do something about it to cure violence. May we continue to be righted, ignited, and united to keep spreading love, freedom, and peace. Here now is a song that we played on this show months ago called Ceasefire. Let's stop the violence. Good night.
Say it loud enough. Ceasefire can't say it enough. Just 2 words, ceasefire, can mean so much. 2 words can bring wars to a halt. Who's to blame? We're all at fault. No one's born with a gun in hand. What happens when we become woman and man? Without greed and prejudice, we're born. It's the reason so many lives are torn. There's a fate for hate, it's not heaven's gate. That's the message, let's get it straight. Words can hurt as much as a wound, but God's word can lift spirits to the moon. Ceasefire, lay your weapons down, free all the hands that we bound. Let's try negotiations, oh, not eliminations. Wars bring death and destruction, with peace and freedom comes construction. Ooh, let's have welfare and not warfare. No, no, stop using religion as an excuse. Stop using it for all the abuse.
It's not complicated.